Here's what we do in MF.Dads and why it works. I want you to listen for a few moments because I know you've been watching my videos. I really appreciate your support. If you haven't reached out, if you haven't commented on one of my videos, it might mean that you see some value, but you're having a little hesitation because you don't really get what's going on. Let me tell you a little bit about what it is that we do. Your brain reacts through programming that's happened in your past. There was a reason that your brain created a system to react to certain things. Now, it comes from our primal needs and our need to survive in the wild. But when you had a childhood or an experience in your life that caused certain reactions, it's now flowing over into your family life. If you can't create a safe space for your partner, if you can't create a safe space for yourself first, and if you can't create a safe space for your kids, are you really actually being a good dad? Now, it's not your fault, but if you don't do something about it, you're not necessarily putting in the work you need to in the responsibility that you are required as a dad, in my opinion. Take it or leave it, but this is how we change what you're doing in your family life that needs to shift. If your wife is complaining about you being reactive, if you can see your kids are not quite so loving and connected to you like you'd want them to, you might have to ask yourself some questions about what needs to change. In those situations in our former life where we had to respond in a way that kept us feeling safe, maybe you didn't feel loved, maybe you didn't feel heard. It's okay, man. We can't control what our parents did. We can't control what happened in our lives leading up to this moment. I know it hurts. It's hard. But every time one of those things happened, your brain created a pathway that it thought was the easiest way to get to the end point. So I want you to think of your brain, your mind, the way you work as a field, right? A beautiful field. It's got flowy hay, sorry, not hail, no storms, flowy hay. And every time you wanted to get to a point, you looked across that field and you walked across the field. And you know, if you walk across the field, you create a path, right? Stomps down a little bit. And the path gets easier. Things don't get stuck on you. You don't get hung up. It's easier to walk. You know where the rocks are so you don't stumble. But what happens is, as you're walking across that field and something crazy happens, if your family life's chaotic or if you start feeling rejected as a child, you take an easier path. And then you burn down a path that you were used to going over and over again. So this is now the familiar path for you. You're walking through a path that your mind thought was the safest. Flash forward to your relationship, to where you're going and what you're doing with your partner or with your kids. You don't feel it's safe. You don't feel like she's hearing you. You feel like she's on top of you and criticizing all the time. Your kids aren't respecting you. These are voices in our heads that are narratives created by self-doubt, inner critic, and a whole bunch of other different narratives in our heads that are voices that I call the Stig's threats, right? You might have heard me talk about my Stig's protocol. We want to be in core dad mode, and everything that stops us from getting there is a threat. It's a threat to our well-being as a father, our well-being as a human, and our family's safety and well-being themselves. So what are you going to do about it? Well, what we do in MF.Dads is we group all of those paths together that we've created that no longer serve us. We label them, and then we build the mental fortitude to recognize them, work against them, and change directions. And as you walk through the field in different paths, your brain starts to recognize that there's other ways to go. It doesn't have to go down the safest, most least vulnerable route. It can go down new routes with confidence, clarity, and calmness. Then you have control over yourself. I've got a whole set of exercises, and in 5 weeks, we can actually create new paths for you to walk down. You may not get on them right away, all the time, every time. It is a work in progress. But I do promise that in 5 weeks, your brain will look like a completely different field, if that makes sense. This is super important for us as our development as fathers grows. It can work before it happens, before you become a father of 3, when you're already a father of 2. You can grow through the stress that's happening and know that you have the strength to handle what's coming your way. If you have any questions, drop me the DM message down below, the word message, and I'll reach out to you. We can talk a little bit more about what happens in the program. But more so, I want to hear what's going on for you. I want to create a safe space for you to talk about what's going on, because likely, if you're a reactive dad, you're probably not feeling like you have that in your life very much. Hope I hear from you soon.